I haven't opened this in years. This was my grandmother's sewing box. It's been tucked away in the back of a closet, a quiet keeper of so many memories. She was always turning nothing into something beautiful, a kind of quiet magic I never really understood when I was younger. They say every stitch tells a story, and as I got older, I realized I was running out of time to hear hers. She passed before I could ask all the questions that fill my mind now. But maybe the stories aren't entirely gone. Maybe they're right here, waiting. By learning her skills, by touching the things she touched, I'm hoping I can finally hear the stories she never got the chance to tell me. So today, we're going to see what's inside and make something new from these old memories. We're going to piece together a story. Number 1. The art of frugal selection. Her first skill wasn't really a technique, it was a mindset. We're so used to having everything we need. We go to a store, see a bolt of fabric we like, and we just buy it. But for my grandmother, and for so many of her generation, the process started much earlier. It was about the art of frugal selection. It was a way of seeing the world that came from leaner times, when being resourceful wasn't a hobby, it was how you survived. Every scrap of fabric was precious. This box isn't just a pile of leftovers, it's a carefully curated library of what's possible. She would have looked at each piece, not just for its color, but for its strength, its size, its future. A bit of an old cotton sheet, worn soft with age? That could be the lining for a baby's quilt, gentle on the skin. A sturdy piece of denim from old work pants? That was destined for a patch on a knee or to become part of a durable apron. Nothing was wasted. Even the tiniest sliver of lace was rolled up and saved, because as she always said, you never know when this will be just the thing you need. I remember watching her mend one of my grandfather's work shirts. The elbow was completely worn through. She didn't just slap a square patch on it. She came to this very box and pulled out a piece of fabric of a similar weight and color. She carefully cut an oval patch, tucked the raw edges under with her fingernail, and pressed them into a neat crease. It was more than just fixing a hole. It was a small act of restoration, a quiet protest against the idea that things are disposable. She was extending the life of that shirt, and in her way, honoring the work my grandfather did while wearing it. So, that's our first step. Looking at this pile, I'm not just choosing the prettiest pieces. I'm trying to think like she would. The apron fabric is soft, but it's a little fragile, so it needs to be a centerpiece, not on a seam that will take a lot of stress. The tweed is strong. It can be an anchor, a border that gives the whole thing structure. And the small, silky green piece? That's the jewel. It needs to be framed, protected, a little window into a story. This process isn't about limitation, it's about respect. It's about understanding the value in things that has nothing to do with money. It's the value of the work that made the cloth, the memories held in its fibers, and the future it can still have. This was her first and most important skill, seeing a treasure where others just saw trash. It was her own kind of everyday magic, and it's the foundation for everything we're about to do. Number 2, improvising patterns. Now that we've chosen our fabrics, we run into the next challenge and the next skill. The art of the improvised pattern. Today, we're used to buying patterns, precise blueprints that tell us exactly what to do. But when all you have is a box of scraps, a formal pattern is a luxury. My grandmother's generation were masters of making do, of creating beauty not in spite of their limitations, but right because of them. Her patterns weren't printed on paper, they were drawn in her mind, a fluid geometry guided by the fabric she had. She couldn't just lay out a long piece of fabric and cut out a dress. She'd have to piece it together, laying the bigger pattern pieces on her largest scraps, and then creatively fitting the smaller parts, a collar, a cuff, a pocket from the odds and ends. This wasn't a compromise, it was just how things were done, and the results were often more unique than anything you could buy in a store. I remember for a school pageant one year, I was cast as a meadow flower. I needed a green dress, but we didn't have money for a new one, and there wasn't enough of any single green fabric in this box. I was heartbroken. I thought I wouldn't get to be in the play, but my grandmother just gave me her quiet smile, sat me down, and pulled out 3 different scraps of green. A pale mint from an old blouse, a darker forest green from a curtain remnant, and a cheerful, grassy green with tiny white polka dots. She didn't see a problem, she saw a design. She laid them out on the floor like a puzzle. A flower isn't just one color of green, she told me. It has all sorts of shades. She cut the body of the dress from the mint green, but since there wasn't enough for the sleeves, she used the forest green. She fashioned a sash from the polka-dotted fabric. What I saw as a patchwork of not enough, she turned into a beautiful, deliberate design. When I wore that dress, I felt more like a flower than if it had been made from a single, boring piece of cloth. She hadn't just made a costume, she taught me how to see things differently. And that's the approach we're taking. There's no pattern for this story cushion. The story is the pattern. The scraps will tell me where they want to go. I'm starting with the largest piece, the blue floral from her apron. This will be the heart of the cushion. I'm not going to cut it into a perfect square, just trim it enough for clean edges, letting its original shape be my guide. Now, this long, rectangular piece of tweed fits perfectly alongside it. And here, a smaller square of linen can nestle right in this empty space. This process is like a conversation with the materials. You don't force them into a shape you've already decided on. You listen. You let their history dictate the design. It's a slower, more organic way of creating, but it's so much more rewarding. It means the final piece isn't just something you've made, but something that has emerged, full of the character of its origins. Number 3. The humble hand stitch. With our pieces cut and arranged, we come to the skill that is the very soul of this craft. The hand stitch. In a world of sewing machines that can create a seam in seconds, the slow act of sewing by hand can feel a little outdated. But for my grandmother, it was a language her hands spoke fluently. She had a machine, a heavy, black singer she treasured, but so much of her work was still done by hand. The delicate hems, the strong repairs, the intricate quilting. Hand stitching wasn't just about getting it done. It was about control, closeness, and a certain kind of quiet thought. Each stitch was a tiny decision. There are so many different stitches, but for our patchwork, we only need to know a few. The first is the simple running stitch. It's just what it sounds like, a simple in and out motion that creates a dashed line, perfect for temporarily holding pieces together. A little trick she taught me was to always use a length of thread no longer than from my fingertips to my elbow. Any longer, and it just tangles. A small lesson in working within manageable limits. I've knotted the end, and now I'm joining this piece of apron blue to the tweed. I bring the needle up from the back, a little ways from the edge, and then down again, up again, down again. See how it holds the two pieces together? It's a temporary bond. But for the final seams, we need something stronger, the backstitch. The backstitch is the unsung hero of hand sewing. It's incredibly strong, almost as durable as a machine stitch. You start by bringing the needle up from the back. Then, you take a small stitch backward from where you began. Then, bring the needle up again a stitch length ahead of your starting point. You create a continuous, overlapping line of thread. Up, back one step, forward two. There's a beautiful metaphor in that, I think. You can't build a strong future without securing the past. I remember sitting on the floor by her armchair, watching her hands as she sewed. They were never rushed. There was a peaceful rhythm to the movement of the needle. Push, pull, loop. It was a form of meditation. She used to say that you put your thoughts into your stitches. If you were angry or rushed, your stitches would be tight and puckered. If you were calm, they would be even and smooth. As I'm piecing these together, I can't help but wonder about the stories held in your own families. Have you ever inherited a box like this, or maybe a set of tools, or a recipe book filled with handwritten notes? I'd be so honored if you'd share a memory of something your grandparents taught you in the comments below. It doesn't have to be a sewing skill. It could be anything, a way of cooking, a phrase they always used. It feels like, in a way, we're all sitting here together, sharing these stories and keeping them alive. In a world that moves so fast, taking a moment to remember feels more important than ever. I can't wait to read your memories. Number 4. A patchwork of memories. Patchwork has always been about more than just saving fabric. It began out of necessity, of course, a way to turn scraps into warm blankets. But it quickly became a form of storytelling. Women would gather at quilting bees to sew, but also to share news, to support each other, and to weave the stories of their lives into the fabric. A memory quilt isn't just a blanket, it's a tapestry of a life. And that is what we are doing now. As I stitch these pieces together, each scrap becomes a chapter in my grandmother's story, and in mine. The technique is the simple backstitch we just learned, but the magic is in the meaning. Let's start with this faded floral piece, her apron. As I run my needle through it, the memories are so vivid. This apron saw every holiday, every family dinner. It absorbed splatters of gravy at Thanksgiving and dustings of powdered sugar from Christmas cookies. When I was small and would run into the kitchen crying over a scraped knee, she would wipe my tears and fold me into this apron. It smelled of safety and comfort. Stitching this piece feels like stitching a hug. It's the foundation of this cushion, just as she was the foundation of our family. Now, let's join it to this piece of dark wool. This is from a skirt she made for herself. She was so proud of it. She'd found a remnant at the fabric store, not quite enough for a full skirt, but she was determined. This is where her improvised patterns came in. She added a clever kick pleat using a contrasting scrap of black, turning a limitation into a stylish detail. She wore this skirt to church, to parent-teacher meetings, anywhere that required a little dignity. She always stood so straight and tall in this skirt. Stitching this feels like I'm channeling her quiet pride, her ability to present her best self no matter the circumstances. And here's a tiny, cheerful piece of yellow gingham. This was from a summer dress she made for me when I was about 5. I loved that dress more than anything. I called it my sunshine dress. I insisted on wearing it until the hem was frayed and I'd grown so much it was almost a shirt. She never got annoyed. She would just let out the hem as far as it would go. When it could go no more, she carefully cut it up, saving the good parts. She told me, "The sunshine isn't gone, we're just saving it for another day." Stitching this piece now, I feel that pure, childish joy. It's a patch of pure sunshine. But what about the pieces without clear stories? Like this swatch of deep green silk. It's a mystery. And that's another part of the process. For the stories we don't know, we get the privilege of imagining them. I imagine this was the lining of a special handbag, or maybe a scarf she was given as a gift. I imagine a moment in her life that was just for her. A small luxury, a secret pleasure. Stitching this piece is an act of creative empathy, a way of acknowledging that her life was vast and contained worlds I never saw. As these pieces come together, a new picture emerges. It's no longer a jumble of scraps, it's the landscape of life. The soft, domestic floral next to the strong, dignified wool. The bright, innocent gingham next to the mysterious, elegant silk. It's a portrait of a woman who is gentle and strong, practical and elegant, known and unknown. You're not just sewing fabric, you are sewing moments. You are stitching time itself. Number 5. Resourceful reinforcement. Now that we've pieced our memories together, we come to a less glamorous but critical skill. Resourceful reinforcement. It's one thing to make something beautiful, but another thing entirely to make something that lasts. Grandmothers, out of necessity, were not just artists. They were engineers. They built things to endure. This skill is all about the hidden structures, the quiet details that give a project strength. When you're working with scraps, you're dealing with fabrics of different weights and ages. The floral apron fabric is delicate, while the tweed from her coat is strong. If I just sew them together as they are, over time, the weaker fabric could tear at the seam. My grandmother would never have allowed that. She would have reinforced it. One of her secret weapons was an old cotton bedsheet. You can see a piece right here in the box, plain, white, and worn to a perfect softness. It's not pretty enough for the front, but its job is vital. She would have cut a small strip of this sheet and used it as a hidden third layer along the seam, between the weak and the strong fabrics. Let me show you. I'll lay this thin strip of sheet along the edge of the apron fabric. Now, when I place the tweed on top and sew my backstitch through all 3 layers, the stress of the seam is distributed. The sturdy old sheet acts as a hidden bridge, protecting the delicate fabric from the pull of the heavy tweed. It's a small, invisible detail, but it's the difference between something that lasts for a year and an heirloom that lasts for generations. This philosophy extended to everything she did. When sewing a button on a coat, she wouldn't just stitch it to the top layer. She'd place a smaller, flat, anchor button on the inside and sew through both at once. This distributed the tension, preventing the button from eventually tearing the fabric. It was a mark of quality, of thinking about the future. Number 6. Making your own notions. As our patchwork starts to look like the front of a cushion, we need to think about finishing it. In modern sewing, this is when we'd reach for a zipper or a new set of buttons, but the philosophy of a grandma's sewing box is to rely on what you have. This leads us to our 6th skill, the art of making your own notions. This is the height of resourcefulness, creating a solution from the scraps of a problem. Our cushion needs a way to close at the back. I could buy a zipper, but that feels like it would betray the spirit of this project. Instead, I'm going to do what she would have done: create fabric ties. I have a few long, thin scraps left over, pieces that were too narrow for the patchwork. These are perfect. By folding them in on themselves and stitching them down, I can create strong, elegant ties. The process is simple. You take a strip of fabric, fold the long edges into the center, and then fold the whole strip in half again to hide the raw edges. Then, a simple stitch down the length creates a clean, finished tie. It takes more time, but the result is a closure that is perfectly matched to the project, born from the same collection of memories. She was also brilliant at making her own buttons. In her box, there are a few of these plain metal button blanks. You simply cut a circle of your chosen fabric, a bit larger than the button, and do a quick running stitch around the edge. You place the button in the center, pull the thread to gather the fabric around the back, and stitch it closed. Just like that, you have a custom button. It's a tiny piece of magic. This mindset of creating the small, functional pieces yourself was about more than saving money. It was about independence. It was a quiet declaration that you didn't need to rely on a store for every little thing. This way of thinking permeated her entire household. If she was missing an ingredient for a recipe, she'd know the perfect substitution. She could look at a problem and see a solution using what she already had. Creating these ties feels like it proves that this box, this collection of memories and materials, is a self-contained world. It has everything we need, if only we have the ingenuity to see it. Number 7. The signature of love. We are at the final stage. The patchwork is complete, the back is prepared, and the ties are made. But there is one last crucial skill, one that turns a well-made object into a cherished heirloom. The final flourish, the signature of love. For my grandmother, this often took the form of a small, embroidered initial tucked away in a corner. It wasn't a loud signature, it was a quiet mark of pride, a final whisper of love stitched into the fabric. It was her way of saying, "I was here, I made this for you." In her sewing box, I found this small bundle of embroidery floss, a mix of colors tangled together. Among them is a dark blue, the color of her eyes. This is the one I'll use. The skill itself is simple, just a few basic embroidery stitches to form a letter. I'm going to stitch her initial, E for Eleanor, into a corner on the back of the cushion. It won't be immediately visible. It's a little secret for anyone who looks closely. As I form the letter, stitch by stitch, it feels more significant than just sewing. It feels like signing a work of art. I remember when she taught me how to write my name, how she would guide my hand to form the letters. This feels just like that. This small, stitched E is her signature. Even though my hands are making it, it is her mark. It acknowledges that these skills, these materials, these stories, they all came from her. It's a collaboration across time. I think this final flourish is what gives an object its soul. It's the difference between a product and a gift. It's the extra 5 minutes. The extra thought that communicates a depth of care. It could be an initial, a tiny embroidered heart, or just a few stitches in a contrasting color. It's a wink from the creator. An object bearing a personal mark is a powerful thing. It tells a story of human hands and affection. It creates a connection between the maker and the recipient that can span generations. This is the last, and most important, of the grandma skills. It's the skill of legacy. It's the conscious act of embedding your love into an object so that it may be carried forward. With this final stitch, the cushion is no longer just a collection of her memories. It is now a carrier of her legacy and the beginning of a new story. So here it is, our story cushion. When I started, this was just a box of forgotten scraps, or so I thought. It was a box of stories, waiting to be read. And by piecing them together, by learning to speak her language of stitches and resourcefulness, I feel like I've had a conversation with her that I thought was lost forever. Holding this, I can feel its weight. Not just the physical weight of the fabric, but the weight of the memories inside. Here is the warmth of her kitchen, the crispness of an autumn walk, the sunshine of a childhood dress. Here is her pride, her quiet dignity, her endless resourcefulness. And here, in the patches I don't recognize, is the mystery of her, the parts of her life that were just her own. This has been so much more than a simple craft project. It's been an act of remembrance, a meditation on loss and on love. It's easy to think that when someone is gone, they're gone completely. But they leave behind echoes, whispers in the objects they touched and the skills they practiced. This sewing box, which sat silent for so long, has become a way to connect with her spirit. The 7 skills we've explored: frugal selection, improvised patterns, the hand stitch, the patchwork of memories, resourceful reinforcement, homemade notions, and the signature of love, aren't just old-fashioned techniques. This is so much more than just a cushion. It's a library of memories. It's a monument to perseverance, stitched together from love and leftovers. And it's a testament to the fact that our stories live on, not just in our minds, but in the things we create and the skills we pass down. I'm going to place it here, in her favorite armchair. It feels right. It feels like a piece of her has come home. If this story resonated with you, and if you'd like to join me on more journeys of discovery and creation, please consider subscribing. Maybe together, we can make sure these precious skills and the beautiful stories they tell are never forgotten. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for listening to her story.